and they will get stunned to stack one of those multipliers for us. So after we do that, ideally it will look something like this, where we got kind of a clump of, and this is the $1 million shot right here. This is the perfect setup. We've got our clump, and then we've got ourselves in a perfect spot to cast our ice shards towards a cone of things that are stacked up. And we've got those barrage of millions of damage numbers stacking up right there in our arc of attack. Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and this is going to be the Sorcerer build that is most general, that you want to strive towards in the end game to be absolutely optimal on playing well with the Sorcerer. I've already done some of the beginner guides and like the build guide for entering into World Tier 4. This is going to be the end game version, the most optimized version, where we have every single piece exactly what we want. We've got our Paragon Board done, we've got our skill tree done, we've done our renown, and this is going to be like the fully cracked out version to give you absolute maximum value on the Sorcerer, a build for you to strive to in the end game. Let's get into it. Alrighty, so first off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the gearing process, because this is probably the most important section of the build guide. We need to talk about what you're looking for when you're farming and why you need certain roles on certain places and what aspects you want to make sure you have. But I will also be going through the skill tree and talking about how the different stuff synergizes, and then I will also be going over the Paragon board to give you a guide on that as well. And then we'll talk about like the skills and the play style and the rotation and how you want to kind of be positioning yourself to get maximum value and all of that. So we'll cover the whole base. I'm just going to start with the gearing process so that you know what to look for. So make sure you watch until the end, because there are some important things you want to know about the play style so you're not missing out on tons of damage and stuff like that. So first of all, for the helm, we really want to be getting cooldown reduction wherever we can get it. So most notably going to be like on the offhand and on the helm, and whenever you can get a high roll of cooldown reduction, we want that, because we need to be cycling through to get Frost Nova up as often as possible, because this is going to be what enables our build to be consistent and teleport around and blast stuff down effectively. We have to cycle through all of these Frost Nova, and we're going to be typically using 5 different things on our skill board that have a cooldown, so we get a lot of value out of having high cooldown reduction and having that optimized, because it's going to allow us a way more consistent playstyle to be able to cycle through the 5 different things within our build that are going to help us crank out those ice shards. So anyway, on the helm, this is a pretty good looking setup. You want the maximum mana for sure, you want the cooldown reduction for sure, and then the lucky hit chance while you have a barrier is obviously very good, because this is a barrier Soric where we're going to be taking advantage of all sorts of barriers, so that is very handy. And then maximum life is going to synergize if you're using something like the Temerity Pants that we would get to here in a second. And you can see the aspect that we've got imprinted. When you hit a crowd controlled enemy, there is up to a 50% chance for that crowd control effect to spread to an unaffected enemy. Now this is really, really good for AoE clearing, speed farming, you're farming XP with a group, or clearing nightmare dungeons and all that, because remember, a main source of our damage is Frost Nova. This kind of spreads out in a radius around you, and if it doesn't hit absolutely everything, the helm will help it spread and jump and have a larger radius all the way around you, so that you can do a lot more damage with your ice shards. Then for the chest armor, this is actually pretty difficult to get. Your Raiment of the Infinite it seems like the uniques are in different tiers in terms of how often they drop. You've got some of the more common ones, then you've got that next tier, which is the ones like Raiment. Then you have the end tier, which is like the Shaco and the Grandfather and stuff like that. There seems to be kind of different tiers. It might take you a long time to get this Raiment of the Infinite. I think I didn't get mine until like level 92. I've seen some people not getting it until like level 97, 98, stuff like that. So it is going to be a difficult one to get, but this chest is absolutely amazing for this build. Because as you can see, the legendary effect on the Raiment is after using teleport, close enemies are pulled to you and stunned for 2 to 3 seconds, but teleport's cooldown is increased by 20%. Another reason why we need a ton of cooldown in this build. Now, this is actually really good versus bosses as well. You want to get a roll as close to that 3.0 as possible, because the better that your roll is on that 2 to 3 range is the more you can get the stagger bar on the boss filled up. So you teleport onto the boss, you're going to fill up that stagger bar, and when the boss staggers, you're going to absolutely be able to blast it down immediately. Plus, it gives you a way longer time frame. I mean, 2 to 3, that's a big difference. It's like a 50% jump when you're trying to blast down your stunned enemies. And we're going to have something that coincides and double dips with that. So a lot of power on the raiment to kind of move in, pull stuff in, stun it, and enable us to do a ton of damage. And it also gives us a rank to the glass cannon passive, which is a really good multiplier for us in doing more damage. Then for the gloves. So it can be a little bit difficult to find good gloves because I think this is kind of the way to go on them. You want crit strike chance for sure, and you want it to be as high. It's got a big range on the gloves, so you want to get gloves that have a high crit strike chance for sure. Big difference between 5 and 12% on one piece. Lucky hit is obviously going to be good where we can get it, and then no secret that we want the +4 ice shards. This is going to be an absolute mandatory part of the gloves, and then attack speed is absolutely amazing for the ice shards build. It's going to help us obviously do a ton more damage. And then the aspect here that gives us the avalanche key passive, the frozen memories aspect, is pretty crucial within this build. So yeah, not a whole lot of leeway on the gloves. You kind of want those rolls on your glove slot. Now there is a little bit of leeway on the pants. Obviously, Temerity is going to be, I did a video here on the channel talking about how Temerity is one of the best legendaries in the game, just in general farming capabilities. Now, Temerity is going to really help you with keeping up that constant barrier. Our playstyle revolves around keeping barriers up, and then this will also help offset things like the glass cannon passive and the fact that the Sorcerer has to kind of get up in there with this build. Temerity will help you generate a lot more toughness and keep your barriers up more consistently by spamming potions to help keep those barriers churning. And if you weren't using Temerity pants, then you would want to go with something like this that I've got over there. And the most important thing you want to get on your pants would be that dodge chance. So get a good roll, get that 8.6% dodge chance. And besides that, you just want damage reduction pants. This is the slot where you're just getting as much damage reduction as possible. So either use Temerity or something like you see over there on the right. Then for the boots, you're probably going to want them to look something like this. The +4 Frost Nova, mandatory. +4 teleport, going to help you cycle through a lot better. That is really good. And then the 26% movement speed. Okay, like movement speed is absolutely crucial in my opinion. It's going to help you move faster in town. Like you can actually move faster in town than using your mount if you get movement speed where you need it on your build, and it's just going to make your quality of life while farming the game. You don't even notice it, but it really snowballs when you have good movement speed. So I think you want your boots to kind of look like this, and then you can see the aspect right here of binding embers, where flame shield is going to let you move unhindered through enemies. But this is more important: enemies you move through while flame shield is active are immobilized for 2 to 3 seconds. And what this is going to do is going to help us double dip, and it's going to proc that immobilize effect for us to stack a bunch of damage, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. And because of that, we'll save the weapon and offhand for a little bit later. We're going to talk about the amulet right now. So as you can see, the aspect on here is control. Control is a very, very important aspect within this build, because you can see you deal 53% more damage to immobilized, stunned, or frozen enemies. So what are we doing in this build? We're proccing all 3 of those things. We're getting the immobilize from the boots. Remember, we just talked about that. We are obviously going to be getting the frozen from right here. Our Frost Nova is going to spread that frozen all the way around us. And we are going to be getting the stun from the raiment chest. Look at that. It's going to pull everything in and stun them for 2 to 3 seconds. So we are proccing all 3 multipliers of this control aspect with the immobilize, the stun, and the frozen. And some of you may not know this because it is not worded super perfect, but these actually stack. It stacks all 3. It's not just, a lot of people think it's like if you just do one of these CC effects, you get 53x damage. No, they stack. So it's 53, 53, 53. If you teleport in, you Frost Nova, and then you Flame Shield to immobilize everything, boom, you're getting 53, 53, 53, and that you're stacking a huge multiplier. And this is why, if you're going to use a two-hander, like a two-handed staff, you would probably want to put the control aspect on your two-handed staff to get that triple multiplier to be as high as possible. But since we're using a one-hander and an off-hander on this build, we want to go with the control aspect on the amulet to at least get a little bit of a bump to that triple multiplier. And then with the rolls on the amulet, again, there's probably not a whole lot of leeway here. Cooldown reduction, mandatory in my opinion. Movement speed, mandatory in my opinion. If you're trying to be an efficient speed farmer, you're trying to play the game efficiently, you want that movement speed. I already talked about that. Plus 3 ranks to the Devouring Blaze passive. That's a lot better than you think it is. I'll talk about that here in a little bit when we go over the skill tree. Plus 3 to all defensive skills. Are you kidding me? We've got to have that. Look how many defensive skills we use here on our skill bar. We've got to be getting tons of value out of that only spot we can get that, which is the amulet right here. So not a whole lot of wiggle room on really anything here with the neck. You want the aspect and those rolls. Then for our rings, again, they're going to be pretty consistent. So the absolute mandatory 3 things you need on your rings: vulnerable damage, crit strike damage, and crit strike chance. Those 3 are non-negotiable. You've got to get them on your build. You got a little bit of leeway on the resource generation. If you saw a different role that you like and you feel like you're sustaining your mana, I could see an argument for something else in that last spot, but you definitely need to make sure you're getting vulnerable, crit strike, and crit chance on your rings for sure. And then as far as the aspects we're going to be using, obviously we want the piercing cold. So ice shards are going to be piercing and hitting more enemies because we're kind of going to be machine gunning those in a straight line. And we want those ice shards to be spreading out for us and constantly piercing. And then we're going to be going with the core or mastery skills. Remember, ice shards is a core skill, so it's going to proc off of our ice shards. And then if we cast them above 100 mana, we gain 40 increased crit chance. Now, you'll see some people talk about kind of earlier in the game, maybe your crit chance is a little bit low, that you might want to put this aspect on your amulet, because then you get the extra crit chance. And that can be a good option, because if you're not critting enough, then you're not going to be stacking this multiplier as effectively. So you probably want to put one of those 2 on the amulet. Either this one right here that revolves around getting extra crit chance on your core skill, which is the ice shards in this case, or go with control because you can stack those 3 multipliers. And now for the 2 slots that you've all been waiting for, the weapon and the offhand. So on the weapon, I think it's a little bit better to go with the one-hander and then the offhander instead of the staff. You can actually get bigger damage numbers if you go with the 2-handed staff, but I don't like sacrificing how we get the cooldown reduction, the mana cost reduction, and everything we kind of get from the offhand, because cooldown is super important. We already talked about that. So I think if you want like the most consistent build, you're going to want that main hand offhand setup. But with 2-hander, you can get some pretty crazy damage, especially if you do something like putting the control aspect on your 2-hander and you stack those 3 multipliers even higher. But anyway, as far as the 2 slots on your weapon, you're going to be looking for vulnerable damage, crit strike damage, core skill damage, and intelligence. There's not a whole lot of leeway there. That's kind of the setup you want. And then usually the wand is a little bit more effective than something like a dagger, because we're going to be getting that lucky hit chance of 15% as one of the base effects of the weapon up top there. Then as far as the aspect in this slot, there are 2 different ones to consider and talk about. So you've got your retribution. This is going to be your distant enemies have an 8% chance to be stunned for 2 seconds when they hit you, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the multiplier. You deal 40% X increased damage to stunned enemies. So obviously if you're wearing the raiment, you're teleporting in, you're stunning everything around you and pulling them closer, that's going to be proccing that 40x multiplier for us. So if you're speed farming, that's what you want to do. But also what some sorcerers like to do is swap their weapon out for something like a boss fight. So you clear the dungeon, you killed all the trash mobs, now you're coming into that boss fight, you swap on this duelist wand, and what that's going to be doing is critical strikes with core skills increase your attack speed by 25% for 5 seconds. 5 seconds is an eternity. You're going to be constantly proccing that and machine gunning those ice shards. You might get a little bit more value out of that than something like the retribution, because you're not going to be able to stun a boss and it's not going to be helping you fill up the stagger bar. So you might want to swap on over to something like this to really machine gun out that damage, especially if you've got a good job and a good chance of proccing that avalanche passive that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. You can really crank out the DPS in a boss situation. But just in general, if I was going to give you like one thing, a lot of you are going to be like, you know what, I don't want to swap. What do I just use and go play the game? I don't want to be swapping weapons all the time. And I would say, okay, probably just go with the retribution, because you don't want to miss out on that huge multiplier that's going to be able to double dip with your raiment while you're able to farm trash mobs a lot faster, because you're going to be killing elites and trash mobs a lot more often than you're doing like boss fights. So if I had to pick between the 2, I would would go with this Grim Wand of Retribution with the aspect based on dealing extra damage to stunned enemies. And then lastly here, the last gear spot we've got is the offhand. Now, obviously you want cooldown reduction, crit chance, and like on the other two, you've got a little bit of leeway, but I like the mana cost reduction, makes it a lot more consistent, and I like the lucky hit chance because it makes it a lot more consistent. Then for the last aspect we're going to be placing, obviously we are going to be doing the deal 25x increased damage while you have a barrier active. This is a barrier sorc. Like I said, we've got temerity giving us barriers. We've got a passive giving us barriers. We've got flame shield. We've got the ice armor. We've got all sorts of different ways to keep barriers active. So that is going to be a great aspect here on the offhand that we definitely want to include in the build. And then for the gems that you want to be socketing in your gear, obviously on your main hand and your offhand, you want more crit strike damage to vulnerable enemies. Remember, vulnerable is a massive source of our damage, so we want to scale that up as much as we can in every slot that we can. Then for your jewelry, we're going to be putting in skulls to get more armor. And then there's a little bit of a debate on the gear pieces here, like the armor. I kind of like getting the damage reduction while control impaired, because usually when you're going to die, it's going to be when you get CC'd, you get stunned by an enemy, and then they sit there and they wail on you until you die. But some people are really going to like throwing rubies in for the extra life because it's going to pair with temerity and give you extra barrier that you're constantly getting from the overhealing. So you can go either route. I think either can be viable depending on the situation, and both will be fine. Kind of it comes down to you and your playstyle and what you kind of want to go with in terms of either getting the damage reduction while you're impaired or just getting the extra life for the consistent value. So that was gearing. Now we're going to move into skills. Sorry if some of the topics on this are getting a little bit long-winded. I don't want to short form you on explaining this. I want you to understand the decisions that are going into this and why you're doing it. Instead of just telling you what to do, I really want you to understand the build so that when you're playing it, you kind of know what is synergizing and why you're doing what you're doing. Now, when we get into the skills, the enhancements we're going to want to get are the Firebolt and the Ice Shards, because the Ice Shards are going to constantly be ricocheting and doing more and more AoE damage. We're going to be kind of teleporting in, grouping things up. We want to group up like big packs of mobs, teleport in, move a little bit, flame shield to proc the immobilize and get our different multiplier stacking, and then ricochet AoE a bunch of machine gun ice shards. And this is super important. We want our skill damage from our ice shards to proc burning, because we have a lot of things that are going to synergize with the burning effect. So the enchantments right here, really super consistent setup to go with. And then as far as what's on our bar, this is going to kind of shock you a little bit. Like, oh my goodness, you don't have a generator. What's going on? You don't have Firebolt. You don't have anything on there to generate mana. This is the most optimized version of the build. And when you have the build optimized, you don't even need to use a generator. So what we can do is we can replace it with something like unstable currents. Now, this is so good because what it's going to be doing is with the second effect on here, the prime unstable currents, look at this, increase your attack speed by 25%. And you can really do some crazy things. Like if you swap over to that wand, like I said, to get the increased attack speed with core skills, and then you cast your unstable currents to get another multiplier on your attack speed, you can really go crazy with the ice shards. So I like having this on there instead of a generator, because if you're playing properly, you're not going to need the generator in the end game. And basically everything besides that slot, besides what's replacing our generator, basically the other 5 things are non-negotiable. Obviously, we have to have ice shards. Obviously, we have to have Frost Nova. This is what enables the build to do a ton of damage and proc that frozen, proc that vulnerable, spread it out based on the aspect we're using and all of that. Then we really need teleport for the mobility and double dipping with the raiment to stun things and give us another multiplier on our damage. And then our double barriers. We want to keep barriers up as often as possible. The flame shield is going to help us proc the immobilize. And then also on our ice armor, it's just going to give us a super consistent way to tank a little bit more damage and also keep barriers up more consistently. And remember, that is why I said on our amulet, it's super important to get the +3 all defensive skills, because it really coincides with all of the stuff there in the defensive section, because it basically gives us 12 skill points to things that we're using. You've got your flame shield, your teleport, your ice armor, and your frost nova. So +3 defensive skills on our amulet gives us 12 skill points that we use within our build. But then I'll actually go over the skill tree itself and I'll walk you through some of the things that you're going to want to understand. So we can just go kind of one in each of the generators. We have to spend 2 points to get to the next section. And there is sometimes maybe that you would want to like swap on over to one of these for a certain niche situation. But when you're just playing the build, you're not going to have to worry about it once it's optimized. Obviously, we're maxing out our ice shards. Now, some people like to take greater ice shards because obviously we're going to have barriers super consistent. But since we're going to be keeping things frozen anyway within our damage rotation, I like to go with hitting the 5 ice shards in a single cast is going to make them vulnerable because it'll help us, be a little bit more consistent with our vulnerable when our Frost Nova is trapped on cooldown. Either one can make sense depending on how you're playing. I do like to go with the destructive one though overall. And then right here with the elemental dominance, that is a big deal because remember, we want to keep our mana high when we're playing. Remember, I said you want to be able to cast 2 or 3 different ice shards while staying above 100 mana. We'll explain why that synergizes here in a little bit, but obviously that means we're going to be staying above 50 mana and we get another X multiplier on our ice shards with this ability right here. So we definitely want 3 points into that. We already kind of talked about the defensive section a little bit. On your teleport, I think it's worth coming over here to scoop up after teleporting. You get damage reduction and then also the one that helps us cycle through the cooldown here a little bit with the enhanced teleport. And I like getting a few points in the glass cannon passive right here. And I do like getting a few points in the glass cannon because it gives us another X multiplier on our damage, but I've only actually put 2 in here. I'm getting the 1 from the raiment. Remember, it gives us that +1 to the glass cannon passive because I needed those points elsewhere to do stuff like put 1 point right here in elemental attunement just to help us get a little bit more consistent cooldown within our different abilities. Remember, we're using 5 different ones that have cooldown, so this is actually pretty impactful here to at least get 1 point in elemental attunement. And then one of the most important things in the build is going to be Frost Nova. We talked about it a little bit. You want to come down here, you want to grab this to killing frozen enemies by Frost Nova is going to reduce cooldown. Obviously, that's great. And then you want to come over here to making things vulnerable. And this is an eternity. 4 seconds in your normal fights, 6 seconds against bosses. Absolutely insane. You have to have it. You want to max this out, get as many points in Frost Nova as you can, and then come down here and take those 2 synergies as well. And then down in the next section, remember, we do want the lucky hit chance on this build, so we're going to take precision magic. And then down here, we've got a couple good synergies, mainly the mana shield. Every time you spend 100 mana, you gain 15% damage reduction for 5 seconds. You could remove a point or 2 on that and stack up the glass cannon. So doing something like this right there, and then getting the 4th point on glass cannon can work. It just kind of depends on how tough you feel when you're playing based on how your character is built. You can move a couple points around here and there. I'm just kind of walking you through the general concept. Then on the next section, I promised to tell you why Devouring Blaze is so important. Remember, on our amulet, we got the +3 ranks of Devouring Blaze, and this is absolutely amazing because this synergizes with so many different things. 60x crit damage against burning enemies, and we're going to be getting the burn from our firebolt enhancement where damage from skills is going to apply burning damage over 8 seconds. So it's an eternity that we're going to be double dipping with Devouring Blaze, and we want to get as many points as we can in that. We're able to stack that up to 6. And then look at the next part of this. If they are also immobilized, and remember, on our boots, we've got the flame shield is going to immobilize enemies for 3 seconds. So this is an insane like triple stacking effect to really take advantage of the burn and the flame shield and the immobilize and get a big multiplier to our damage. And that's going to be important when I walk you through the play style and how to maneuver the battlefield to make sure you're stacking these things to get those big numbers that are in the millions that you can get with ice shards. And then for the last 2 sections down here, obviously all of these cold synergies we're going to want to get points into. We're getting extra damage against elites, we're getting extra damage against chilled or frozen, we're getting extra damage against vulnerable, and then also we are going to be getting cold damage against vulnerable enemies, can restore mana. So all of these very, very good synergies within the build. And then we talked about unstable currents a little bit already. This can be a good option to replace your generator when you don't need it anymore because you've got great synergies here that are going to give you mainly the extra attack speed is what we're looking for. And then lastly down here, I like to take the Avalanche key passive. I think it's a little bit more consistent. Like if you're just looking for one thing that you want to be kind of told how to play effectively. Some people do like Shatter because after freeze expires, enemies are going to explode for 25% of the damage. This can help you. Like if you're going to do a Champion's Demise, Trash Mob, Elite Mob farming over and over and over again for 25 hours, I could maybe see going with Shatter because it's going to help you kind of clear out those massive clumps of mobs. But in general, for boss fights, for being consistent, keeping that mana high, remember we've got different things that synergize with staying above 50, above 100 mana and all of that. I think Avalanche is going to help you do that a little bit more effectively. It's going to make the build kind of function a little bit better, but I can see situations where Shatter would make sense. Okay, hang in there with me. The Paragon board. I know this video is getting long and it's getting complicated, but there's a lot I need to go over to make sure you're understanding how everything kind of functions within the build, like I talked about in the skills. So I got to zoom out a little bit and go over the Paragon board with you here. But also, it's worth noting that this is the end version of the build. You're going to want to do your Paragon board maybe a little bit different when you're level 60, you're level 70, you don't have your glyphs up to level 15. You're going to want to position things a little bit differently. This is going to be like okay, I've done my renown, I've got everything unlocked, I've really grinded it into the end game, and I've got my glyphs to level 15. I've got a bigger radius on all my glyphs, and now I've got more options available to different boards that I can set up. This is going to be like the final boss version of the Paragon board, but I do want to make sure you understand when you're level 60, you're level 70, you're level 77, you want to probably do a different Paragon board setup than what I'm going to show you right here. And it is what it is. It's just kind of how the game is designed to function. If we want to be playing optimally, we just have to be redoing our Paragon board sometimes and shifting things around as we get the bigger radius and as we get different things unlocked and as we get more points to put in. It means that we got to shift things around to continue being optimal. But anyway, the main gist, a lot of times what people are looking for as like the main overarching gist of things is what glyphs do I focus on? What ones am I going to be leveling up? Well, on this, you're going to see we've got the Elementalist because obviously we're getting the 5x multiplier for 10 seconds, which is a really long time, stacking per element. So as long as we're doing fire, cold, and lightning, we're getting a multiplier on our damage. And we are actually making sure to proc all three effects of this within the build. You get lightning damage from teleport. You teleport in, boom, you hit everything, you do lightning damage with teleport. Then you also, obviously, we proc a ton of cold damage in this build, and we get the fire from flame shield and also the fire bolt enhancement, which means we get a lot of value out of the Elementalist glyph right here. Then we want to also take Tactician because this is going to give us another X multiplier on our damage. You deal 10% X increased damage for 4 seconds after casting a defensive skill. This is basically a permanent multiplier for us. We're constantly using defensive skills. We're going to be popping off, cycling through our ice armor, our teleport, our flame shield, our ice nova, and we're going to keep this multiplier up essentially forever. So Tactician, amazing glyph as well. Then we've got the Frostbite glyph, and there's something important to talk about here. So you'll see the increased damage to chilled targets. Now you might get a little bit concerned in this build. We aren't proccing a ton of chill. Well, the devs have confirmed that frozen counts as chill. It's like an extra tough chill. So if you're worried that like, oh, I'm not proccing chill, I'm just doing frozen does count as chill. So we're going to be getting the effects here of the Frostbite glyph. Then our Flame Feeder glyph right here is going to give us increased damage against burning enemies. And again, remember we've got the proc the burn from the Fire Bolt enhancement. It's going to help us keep that up super consistently. And then Exploit. This is a ridiculous glyph. You can see that it scales with dexterity. We want to be putting this in a board where we can get a lot of dexterity. You can see we've got the 44 dexterity right there. And what this glyph is going to be doing and why it's so good is because we are going to be getting the bonus damage against vulnerable enemies. And this is just one of the most important things we're going to do. Vulnerable damage is completely broken. You need it in every build. You need a consistent way to proc it, and it's going to absolutely scale up your numbers like crazy. And then the last two here, we've got Destruction. It's going to help us scale up our crit strike damage. So yes, please. Thank you. We definitely want that. And then Control right here. We're going to be dealing extra damage to crowd controlled targets, which we're going to be doing super consistently. All the immobilizes and stuns and the frozen and everything we kind of mentioned in the build. And it's just going to help us kind of double dip with all that and get more value. So that is kind of like the main gist of the glyphs that we're going to be socketing in. And if you want the full breakdown, Again, you can pull this up and take a look and kind of walk through each node. But some of the most important things that we want to take note of the Paragon board is we don't want to be wasting points. We don't want to be like going way over here for a legendary node. We want to be taking the absolute most critical nodes. Things like right here, the damage to vulnerable enemies, amazing. Things like attack speed or whatever's going to help us synergize with the actual build. Otherwise, we don't want anything. We just want to go straight to getting all of these glyphs unlocked and get them up to level 15 so we get the bigger radius. But there is a couple different situations where you'll see me go out of the way. Like down here, we go for the vulnerable. And then over here, I go a little bit out of the way to get a little bit of extra mana. Remember, we want to be able to stay above 50, above 100 mana as consistently as possible. I'll go out of the way a little bit over here to get damage against stunned enemies because I'm using Raiment. If you're not using Raiment, you would take these points out and go somewhere else because you're not going to be getting that massive stack to these stunned enemies damage. So yeah, there's a couple different exceptions to the rule where you want to go out of the way and get something super impactful. But in general, we're going to kind of get through here as efficiently as possible and make sure we get all these glyphs unlocked. And that's why, love it or hate it, you're going to want to do your renown grind. Hopefully Blizzard comes up with a way to help this kind of shift from season to season, so you only have to do it once. But unfortunately, it is super important because we want to be able to get as much power out of the Paragon board as we can because it is super impactful. Okay, so now we get into the part where we need to talk about the optimal gameplay and how to actually play the build. So you can see over there on the top left, I've got the different steps involved. So first, we're going to be grouping up enemies. We're going to be moving around the battlefield. We're going to be grouping up things, and we're going to be setting up our kill rotation. Then we are going to teleport in, and what this is going to do is it's going to make all of these enemies move towards that teleport. Remember, our teleport with the Raiment chest is going to pull everything into us when we teleport. So you kind of want to group up that big stack, teleport into the middle of them, and they will all converge on you, and they will get stunned to stack one of those multipliers for us. So after we do that, ideally, it will look something like this, where we got kind of a clump of mobs around us, couple elite packs, whatever, that we can kill. Now, what we're going to want to do right here is we're going to want to pop that Frost Nova that you see in step 3, because what that's going to do is mass AoE, freeze everything, make them vulnerable, and enable us to get those stacks rolling. Then step 4, we want to Flame Shield to be able to move around the enemies freely and stack that Immobilize to give us another multiplier on our damage. So we're gonna kind of cast the Flame Shield and make sure we hit everything really quick. Now, this is a step that a lot of people miss, and you want to kind of move slightly because of how ice shards work and how you kind of machine gun in one direction, and how it can be a little bit weird with hitting mobs that are directly stacked on top of you when there's a ton of them on you. You do want to kind of, after you immobilize, you want to move just a little bit out of the way and give yourself a cone to machine gun those ice shard ricochets. And then at that point, it is blast off. You just kind of machine gun ice shards, boom, 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 and kind of hit the main points of the clump, ricochet around as much as possible, stack those huge numbers, and blast everything down. Then once that pack is dead, we're going to spend our dash to go forward towards the next pack and go back to step 1, where we start grouping stuff up. We teleport in, we get him to stack, we Flame Shield Immobilize after we Frost Nova, and repeat that process. And that's going to be kind of how you generally play this optimal play style, revolving around grouping things up and getting those multipliers stacked up, and then absolutely blasting everything in your radius. And I can show you this in real action. Work with me here. I know the quality is not going to be the best because I want to be able to kind of zoom in and slow motion talk to you about what is going on. So right here, you can kind of see the steps in action. We group up mobs. We've got a lot of stuff following us. Then what we're going to do, as we've got that clump that I kind of showed you in the graphic that we were drawing with, then we're going to be teleporting in, boom, and that groups everything up, and you can see all those stun icons popping up. Then we want to be flame shielding and proccing more damage multipliers, which you can see depending on the situation. You can do it in either direction. You can either Frost Nova to keep things locked down while you Flame Shield Immobilize, because the Flame Shield lasts a little bit less time, or you can use that as an opportunity to keep grouping things up, and then once they're grouped up a little bit more, cast your Frost Nova. Either way, you want to cast your Frost Nova and do your Flame Shield Immobilize, and then you've got this set up right here where you're not like directly in the middle of them, and you've got that nice cone that you can shoot all of your damage through. So then right here, you'll see the absolutely massive numbers in the millions after we stack up all those multipliers, and everything just blows up around us. So that's the rotation. I can show you one more time here. We're grouping things up. We're getting a nice ball. We teleport in. We make sure we proc the Flame Shield and the Frost Nova, and then everything just explodes. And this is the $1 million shot right here. This is the perfect setup. We've got our clump, and then we've got ourselves in a perfect spot to cast our ice shards towards a cone of things that are stacked up. And we've got those barrage of millions of damage numbers stacking up right there in our arc of attack. So now I can zoom out a little bit for you. If you want to see the more high quality version, boom, group them up, proc the effects, blast them down, and that is kind of rotation. Also, I have a link down below to the planner that I used for putting this together if you want to see it all laid out in text form on your end to be able to follow it. Having a lot of fun playing the Ice Shards Sorcerer and trying to optimize it as much as possible after doing the more beginner version, the mid-game version, like the tier 4 entry version, and now the optimized end-game Ice Shards final boss version of the build. So I appreciate all of you. Remember to subscribe on your way out if you enjoy Diablo 4 content, and I shall see you soon in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.